From Nicomachean Ethics, Book 1. Every art and every inquiry, and similarly every action and every pursuit, is thought to aim at some good, and for this reason the good has rightly been declared to be that at which all things aim. But a certain difference is found among ends. Some are activities, others are products apart from the activities that produce them. Where there are ends apart from the actions, it is the nature of the products to be better than the activities. Now there are as many actions, arts, and sciences, and their ends are also many. The end of the medical art is health, that of shipbuilding, a vessel, that of strategy, victory, that of economics, wealth. But there are such arts fall under a single capacity, as bridle making and other arts concerned with the equipment of horses fall into the art of riding, and this and every military action under strategy. In the same way, other arts fall under yet others. In all of these, the ends of the master arts are to be preferred to all of the subordinate ends. It is for the sake of the former that the latter are pursued. It makes no difference whether the activities themselves are the ends of the action, or something else apart from the activities, as in the case of the sciences just mentioned. If, then, there is some end of the things we do, which we desire for its own sake, everything else being desired for the sake of this, and if we do not choose everything for the sake of something else, for at that rate the process would go on to infinity so that our desire would be empty and in vain, clearly this must be the good, and the chief good. Will not the knowledge of it, then, have a great influence on life? Shall we not, like archers who have a mark to aim at, be more likely to hit upon what is right? If so, we must try, in outline at least, to determine what it is, and of which the sciences or capacities is the object. It would seem to belong to the most authoritative art, and that which is most truly the master art. And politics appears to be of this nature, for it is that which ordains, for it is this that ordains which of the sciences should be studied in a state, and which each class of citizens should learn, and up to what point they should learn them. And we see even the most highly esteemed of capacities to fall under this. For example, strategy, economics, rhetoric. Now, since politics uses the rest of the sciences, and since again it legislates as to what we are to do and what we are to abstain from, the end of this science must include those of the others, so that this end must be the good for man. For even if the end is the same for a single man and for a state, that of the state seems at all events something greater and more complete, whether to attain or to persevere. Through it, it is worthwhile to attain the end, merely for one man. It is finer and more godlike to attain it for a nation than for city-states. These, then, are the ends at which our inquiry aims, since it is political science in one sense of that term. Let us resume our inquiry and state, in view of the fact that all knowledge and every pursuit aims at some good, what it is that we say political science aims at, and what is the highest of all goods achievable by action. Verbally, there is very general agreement, for both the general run of men and people of superior refinement say that it is happiness, and identify living well and doing well with being happy. But with regard to what happiness is, they differ, and the many do not give the same account as the wise. For the former think that it is some plain and obvious thing, like pleasure, wealth, or honor. They differ, however, from one another, and often even the same man identifies it with different things. With health when he is ill, with wealth when he is poor. But, conscious of their ignorance, they admire those who proclaim some great ideal that is above their comprehension. Now, some thought that apart from these many goods, there is another which is self-subsistent, and causes the goodness of these as well. To examine all the opinions that have been held were perhaps somewhat fruitless, enough to examine those that are most prevalent or that seem to be arguable. To judge from the lives that men lead, most men of the most vulgar type, seem, not without some ground, to identify the good or happiness with pleasure, which is the reason that they love the life of enjoyment. For there are, we may say, three prominent types of life that just mentioned, the political, and thirdly, the contemplative life. Now, the mass of mankind are evidently quite slavish in their tastes, preferring a life suitable to beasts, but they get some ground for their view from the fact that many of those in high places share the tastes of Sardanapalus. A consideration of the prominent types of life shows that people of superior refinement and of active disposition identify happiness with honor, for this is, roughly speaking, the end of the political life. But it seems too superficial to be what we are looking for, since it is thought to depend on those who bestow honor rather than on him who receives it. But the good we define to be something proper to a man and not easily taken from him. Further, men seem to pursue honor in order that they may be assured of their goodness. At least it is by men of practical wisdom that they seek to be honored. Among those who know them, and on ground of their virtue, clearly, then, according to them, at any rate, virtue is better. And perhaps one might even suppose this to be, rather than honor, the end of political life. But even this appears to be somewhat incomplete, for the possession of virtue seems to actually compatible with being asleep, or with lifelong inactivity, and further, with the greatest sufferings and misfortunes. But a man who was living so no one would call happy, unless he were maintaining a thesis at all costs. But enough of this, for the subject has been sufficiently treated even in the current discussions. Third comes the contemplative life, which we shall consider later. The life of money-making is one undertaken under compulsion, and wealth is evidently not the good we are seeking, for it is merely useful for the sake of something else. And so, one might rather take the previously mentioned objects to be ends, for they are loved for themselves. But it is evident that not even these are ends, yet many arguments have been thrown away in support of them. Let us leave this subject then. Let us again return to the good we are seeking, and ask what it can be. It seems different in different actions and arts. It is different in medicine, in strategy, and the other arts likewise. What then is the good of each? Surely that for whose sake everything is done. In medicine, this is health. In strategy, victory. In architecture, a house. And in any other sphere, something else. And in every action and pursuit, the end. For it is the sake of all of this that men do whatever else they do. Therefore, it is an end for all that we do. This will be the good achievable by action, and if there are more than one, these will be the goods achievable by action. So the argument has, by a different course, reached the same point, but we must try to state this even more clearly. Since there is evidently more than one end, and we choose some of these, for example, wealth, flutes, and in general instruments, for the sake of something else, clearly not all ends are final ends, but the chief good is evidently something final. Therefore, it is only one final end. This will be what we are seeking, and if there are more than one, the most final of these will be what we are seeking. Now, we call that which is in itself worthy of pursuit more final than that which is worthy of pursuit for the sake of something else, and that which is never desirable for the sake of something else more final than the things that are desirable both in themselves and for the sake of that other thing. And therefore, we call final, without qualification, that which is always desirable in itself and never for the sake of something else. Now such a thing, happiness, above all else, is held to be, for this we choose always for self, and never for the sake of something else. But honor, pleasure, reason, and every virtue we choose for themselves, and if nothing resulted from them, we should still choose each of them. But we choose them also for the sake of happiness, judging that by means which we shall be happy. Happiness, on the other hand, no one chooses for the sake of these, nor in general for anything other than itself. Presumably, however, to say that happiness is the chief good seems a platitude, and a clearer account of what is still desired. This might perhaps be given if we could first ascertain the function of man. For just as a flute player, a sculptor, or an artist, and in general for all things that have a function or activity, the good and the well is thought to reside in the function. So it would seem to be for man, if he has a function. Have the carpenter, then, and the tanner certain functions or activities, and has man none? Is he born without a function? Or, as eye, hand, and foot, in general, each of the parts evidently has a function, may one lay it down that a man simply has a function apart from all of these? What then can this be? Life seems to be common even to plants, but we are seeking what is peculiar to man. Let us exclude, therefore, the life of nutrition and growth. Next, there would be a life of perception, but it also seems common even to the horse, the ox, and every animal. There remains, then, an active life of the element that has a rational principle. Of this, one part has a principle in the sense of being obedient to one, and the other in the sense of possessing one and exercising thought. And as the life of the rational element has two meanings, we must state that life, in the sense of activity, is for what we mean, for this seems to be the more proper sense of the term. Now, if the function of man is an activity of the soul which follows or implies a rational principle, and if we say so-and-so and a good so-and-so have a function which is in the same kind, for example, a liar and a good liar player, and so without qualification, in all cases, eminence and respect of goodness being added to the name of the function, for the function of a liar player is to play the lyre, and that of a good lyre player is to do so well. If this is the case, and we state the function of man to be a certain kind of life, and this to be an activity or actions of the soul implying a rational principle, and the function of a good man to be the good and noble performance of these, and if any action is well performed, when it is performed in accordance with the appropriate excellence, if this is the case, human good turns out to be an activity of the soul in accordance with virtue, and if there be more than one kind of virtue, in accordance with the best and most complete. But we must add, in a complete life. For one swallow does not make a summer, nor does one day, and so too one day, or a short time, does not make a man blessed and happy. The life of those who identify happiness with virtue is also in itself pleasant. For pleasure is a state of soul, and to each man, that which he is said to be a lover of is pleasant. For example, not only is a horse pleasant to the lover of horses, and a spectacle to the lover of sights, but in also the same way, just acts are pleasant to the lover of justice, and, in general, virtuous acts to the lover of virtue. Now, for most men, their pleasures are in conflict with one another, because these are not by nature pleasant. But the lovers of what is noble find pleasant the things that are by nature pleasant, and virtuous actions are such, so that these are pleasant for such men as well as in their own nature. Their life, therefore, has no further need of pleasure as a sort of adventurous charm, adventitious charm. But it has pleasure in itself. For besides what we have said, the man who does not rejoice in noble actions is not even good, since no one would call a man just who did not enjoy acting justly, nor any man liberal who did not enjoy liberal actions, and similarly in all other cases. If this is so, virtuous actions must be in themselves pleasant, but they are also good and noble, and have each of these attributes in the highest degree. Since the good man judges well about these attributes, his judgment is such as we have described. Happiness, then, is the best, noblest, and most pleasant thing in the world, and these attributes are not severed as in the description at Delos. Most noble is that which is most just, and best is health, but most pleasant is to win which we have loved. For all of these properties belong to the best activities, and these, or one, the best of these, we identify with happiness. Yet evidently, as we said, it needs the external goods as well. For it is impossible, nor or not easy, to do noble acts without the proper equipment. In many actions we use friends and riches and political power as instruments, and there are some things the lack of which takes the luster from happiness, as good birth, goodly children, beauty. For the man who is very ugly in appearance, or ill-born, or solitary and childless, is not likely to be happy. And perhaps a man would still be less likely if he had thoroughly bad children, or friends, or had lost good children or friends by death. As we said then, happiness seems not to need this sort of prosperity in addition. For which reason some identify happiness with good fortune, and others identify it with virtue. The answer to the question we are asking is plain also from the definition of happiness, for it has been said to be a virtuous activity of the soul of a certain kind. Of the remaining goods, some must necessarily pre-exist as conditions of happiness, and others are naturally cooperative and useful as instruments. And this will be found to agree with what we said at the outset, for we stated the end of political science to be the best end, and political science spends most of its pains on making the citizens to be part of a certain character, good and capable of noble acts. It is natural, then, that we call neither an ox, nor a horse, nor any of the animals happy, for none of them is capable of sharing in such activity. For this reason a boy is not happy, for he is not yet capable of such acts owing to his age, and boys who are called happy are being congratulated by reason of the hopes we have for them. For there is required, as we said, not only complete virtue, but also a complete life, since many changes occur in life, and all matter of chances, and the most prosperous may fall into great misfortunes in old age, as is told of Priam in the Trojan cycle, and one who has experienced such chances and has ended wretchedly, no one calls happy. Now, many events happen by chance, and events differing in importance, small pieces of good fortune or of its opposite, clearly do not weigh down the scales of life one way or the other. But a multitude of great events, if they turn out well, will make life happier, for not only are they themselves such as to add beauty to life, but the way a man deals with them may be noble and good. While if they turn out ill, they crush and maim happiness, for they bring both pain with them and hinder many activities. Yet even in these, nobility shines through, when a man bears with resignation the many great misfortunes, not through insensibility to pain, but through nobility and greatness of the soul. If activities are, as we said, what gives life its character, no happy man can become miserable, for he will never do the acts that are hateful and mean. For the man who is truly good and wise, we think, bears all the chances of life becomingly, and always makes the best of circumstances. As a good general makes the best military use of his army at his command, and a good shoemaker makes the best shoes out of the hides that are given him, and so with all the other craftsmen. And if this is the case, the happy man can never become miserable, though he will not reach blessedness if he meet with fortunes like those of Priam. Nor again is he many-colored and changeable, for neither will he be moved from his happy state easily or by any ordinary misadventures, but only by many great ones. Nor, if he has had many great misadventures, will he recover his happiness in a short time, but if at all, only in long and complete in one in which he has attained many splendid successes.